At first glance, Shein looks like a miracle, a brand that rose from near obscurity to become one of the most downloaded fashion apps on earth. It dominates Gen Z closets, Instagram feeds, and TikTok trends. In just under a decade, it managed to leapfrog giants like Zara and H&M, not with stores, but with speed. Shein didn't just revolutionize fast fashion, it annihilated the timeline. While traditional fashion houses take months to bring styles from concept to shelf, Shein does it in days. New products are launched every 24 hours. Thousands of new SKUs flood the app weekly. Algorithms track what you like, and factories respond in real time. It's fast fashion on steroids, digital, disposable, and dangerously addictive. But behind this digital storefront lies a brutal truth. The speed isn't powered by innovation, it's fueled by exhaustion. In a small industrial district on the outskirts of Guangzhou, the hum of sewing machines never stops. Dimly lit workshops run 18 to 20 hours a day. Most have no signage, no fire exits, no contracts. Workers, many of them migrants, live above the factories in cramped dorms and are paid per garment, not per hour. Some earn as little as 2 cents per piece. Journalists who've tried to get inside describe labyrinthine buildings, coded entrances and whispered warnings. In many cases, factory managers deny access or even knowledge of working with Shein. But labels don't lie, and many garments bear the proof. Made for Shein, stitched in haste reveals a supply chain designed to disappear. The exploitation isn't limited to physical spaces. It's embedded in data. Shein's rise coincided with its mastery of digital surveillance. The company's app doesn't just sell clothes, it studies behavior. It tracks clicks, pauses, wish lists, cart abandonment, and even swiping patterns. This data is fed to an internal system that predicts what will sell before you even know you want it. Designs are scraped from independent creators, tweaked by AI, and sent to factories within hours. Originality is optional, speed is sacred, and yet most customers have no idea. They see the low prices, the trend forward looks the influencer hauls, and the dopamine rush of next-day delivery. What they don't see are the missing safety nets, the unpaid overtime, the injuries, or the children hiding behind sewing tables. Because Shein is more than just a brand. It's a black box, opaque, complex, and disturbingly effective. The company says it doesn't own factories, that it works with independent suppliers, that it audits labor conditions, but leaked documents, undercover footage, and former workers tell another story. In 2022, a British documentary crew went undercover inside several Shein factories. What they found was chilling. Workers pulling 75-hour weeks, denied weekends, fined for mistakes, and locked inside their facilities during peak hours. When asked why they stayed, the answer was always the same: there's nowhere else to go. Shein's headquarters in China remain largely inaccessible to journalists. It has no real PR team. It grants few interviews, and it keeps operations secret, even from investors. The company is privately held and fiercely guarded, but the numbers are staggering. Estimated revenues crossed $30 billion, valuations topped $100 billion, and in some months, Shein has more app downloads than Amazon. So how did a virtually unknown brand from Nanjing conquer the world? The answer is simple. It gave people what they wanted: fast, cheap fashion in endless supply, and it did so while staying invisible. No glossy ad campaigns, no celebrity endorsements, just influencer partnerships, viral hauls, and a ruthless back-end operation powered by data and desperation. But now the curtain is being pulled back. Activists are beginning to rally. Whistleblowers are coming forward. Consumers are asking questions. And regulators slowly are paying attention. The fashion empire built in silence is facing a storm of scrutiny. Shein didn't become a global fashion juggernaut by accident. It became one by design, by engineering a supply chain so nimble, decentralized, and hidden that it could deliver runway-ready designs faster than any fashion house in history. But behind every cheap outfit is an expensive secret. And it starts with a single word: deregulation. Unlike most fashion retailers, Shein doesn't just operate across borders, it weaponizes them. At the heart of Shein's success lies a financial maneuver known as fragmented production. This strategy splits the supply chain across dozens, sometimes hundreds of small factories, often informal or unregistered, each responsible for a different phase of the process. One shop might cut fabric, Another might stitch sleeves. A third might iron and package. By the time a t-shirt reaches your doorstep, it has passed through so many hands that accountability is almost impossible. This fragmentation isn't a flaw, it's the feature, because when no single supplier is responsible for the whole garment, no one has to take the blame. When workers protest conditions, Shein can claim it had no knowledge. When regulators investigate records vanish, contracts are vague, names are changed, factories are rebranded. And because many workers are migrants without legal protections, they don't file complaints. They disappear. But Shein doesn't just exploit physical borders. It exploits legal ones too. Thanks to a loophole in US customs law known as the de minimis rule, any package imported into the United States that's worth less than $800 is exempt from tariffs and intense scrutiny. Shein uses this rule to its fullest extent, shipping millions of low-value packages directly to consumers, avoiding not only import taxes, but also oversight. In 2022 alone, it's estimated that Shein shipped over 400,000 packages per day to the US, the vast majority of which were small enough to dodge duties entirely. That's billions of dollars flowing through ports with barely a glance from customs. But the most stunning part of Shein's strategy lies in its tax practices. The company, though headquartered in China, routes much of its revenue through Singapore, a country known for its low corporate tax rates and investor-friendly regulations. By registering subsidiaries in tax havens, Shein effectively reduces its liabilities while maintaining operational control. It pays a fraction of what legacy retailers pay despite outselling many of them. Meanwhile, the people making the clothes see none of those profits. Former workers have described pay schemes where wages are withheld for months, deductions are made arbitrarily, and overtime is expected often unpaid. Health insurance is rare. Contracts, if they exist, are vague. One worker claimed she was fined 300 yuan, nearly half her monthly wage, for making a stitching error on a batch of dresses. Another said he once worked 29 consecutive days during peak season, collapsing from exhaustion on the 30th. And yet Shein's app continues to dominate. The company invests heavily in data infrastructure, not safety nets. Engineers and developers are tasked with optimizing conversion rates, not compliance protocols. Shein tracks every click, every like, every return. Its AI can predict future trends based on browsing behavior, enabling the company to design and manufacture new styles within 72 hours. It's fashion by algorithm, style by surveillance. The cost of this speed is borne not by consumers, but by those at the bottom of the ladder, those who stitch the dreams of a billion-dollar brand without even being listed on a payroll. What's more alarming is that Shein's success has inspired copycats. Other ultra-fast fashion brands have emerged replicating its model. The industry is racing to the bottom not just in price, but in ethics. Retailers that once boasted about sustainable sourcing now fear being undercut. Brands that invested in compliance are losing ground to those that cut corners. And as regulators scramble to catch up, Shein keeps evolving. The result is a fashion ecosystem where ethical practices are punished and exploitation is rewarded. But what does Shein say? Publicly, the company claims it's working to improve. It has announced supplier audits, training programs, and ethical sourcing goals. It has pledged to use more sustainable materials and reduce waste. But the language is vague. The timelines are distant, and the transparency is non-existent. Because for Shein, PR is damage control, not transformation. Behind every press release lies a machine engineered for speed, not fairness. And while consumers scroll through endless product pages, the people who make those products are trapped in a system that denies them voice, agency, and rest. It's easy to talk about systems, supply chains, loopholes, corporate structures, but at the heart of every empire, every billion-dollar machine, are human beings. And in Shein's case, it's the seamstresses, cutters, pressers, and packers who make the fantasy possible, often at a cost we can't imagine. Let's begin in Nankun, an industrial district in Guangzhou. Here, in buildings crammed together like bricks, are what workers call the ghost factories, barely marked, poorly ventilated rooms where fashion moves faster than time. At one such site, a woman named Lily, aged 27, works 16 hours a day stitching dresses. She doesn't get Sundays off. She doesn't have a contract. Her pay is based entirely on output, about 0.03 per item. That means she must sew over 1,000 pieces per week just to survive. She hasn't seen her family in 2 years. Then there's Feng, a 39-year-old ironer who migrated from Hunan province. His job is to press garments as they leave the sewing stations. The room he works in averages 35 degrees Celsius in summer. There's no air conditioning. He's burned his hands multiple times but keeps working because if he misses a quota, he loses part of his pay. He shares a room with 7 other workers. There are no fire exits. When asked about regulations, he laughs. There are no rules, he says, only speed. Many of the workers interviewed for Underground Reports live and work in the same building. Sleeping quarters are usually upstairs, tiny shared dorms with no privacy. Bathrooms are communal. Meals are quick and cheap, instant noodles, rice and pickled vegetables. Few have healthcare, none have job security. And yet they stay. Why? Because Shein's factories often pay marginally more than rural options. Because they are young migrants with no legal education. Because some are undocumented and fear arrest. Because many send money back home. Because in a system designed to exploit options don't feel like choices, they feel like ultimatums. In one secretly recorded video, a woman with bloodshot eyes talks about working 28 consecutive days during peak season. She says she fainted on the 29th. Her supervisor told her to drink sugar water and keep going. The human cost of fast fashion is not hypothetical. It's real, and it's devastating. But the pain doesn't end at factory walls. There's also the theft of intellectual labor designers who find their creations ripped off, often by Shein's algorithmic eye. Artists like Bailey Prado and Mariama Diallo have publicly called out Shein for stealing their work down to color schemes, cuts, even model poses. The platform rarely responds. When it does, the excuse is always the same: it was the supplier's fault. Meanwhile, the stolen designs go viral. Influencers wear them. Fans buy them. The original creators are buried by the algorithm. One designer said she felt erased by Shein, not just ignored, but algorithmically overwritten. It's a pattern of silencing, of deflecting, of pretending the harm doesn't exist. Shein's reach isn't limited to China. Reports have emerged from garment workers in Brazil and India who claim they were subcontracted by Shein partners under equally grim conditions. In some cases, they say they weren't paid at all. In others, they allege they worked under false promises and were locked into debt. And yet Shein's marketing tells a different story. Their website features pastel aesthetics, inclusive sizing upbeat slogans. Their Instagram feed is filled with smiling models and influencer hauls. Their TikTok challenges go viral. The vibe is fun, fast and fresh. But behind the ring lights and filters is a world held together by exhaustion, isolation and silence. And consumers are beginning to sense it. Some influencers who previously partnered with Shein have cut ties. Others have released apology videos after discovering the truth. Hashtags like more boycott Shein and Shein exposed trend periodically, though they are often drowned out by haul videos and discount codes. Shein knows how to control the narrative. It uses micro-influencers to flood the zone. It hosts brand trips to distract attention. It buys ad space in bulk and promotes its sustainability pledges. But rarely, if ever, does it address the core allegations: the unpaid labor, the grueling hours, the theft of ideas, the environmental destruction. Because to address those would be to admit that the system works exactly as intended. What's most disturbing is the normalization. Young consumers are taught to expect $4 dresses, $3 sunglasses, $2 tops. They no longer question how something so cheap could be made, shipped and delivered within days. They don't see the humans, just the haul. But that's beginning to change. The machine built by Shein is nearly perfect, optimized, global, invisible. And yet perfection breeds complacency. The very strength of Shein's empire, its speed, scale, and silence has become its most dangerous vulnerability. Because silence does not last forever, the global media is waking up. Investigations by Reuters, Public Eye. The New York Times and watchdog NGOs have cracked through the brand's glossy surface. Undercover footage from factories in Guangzhou revealed laborers sewing until 3 a.m., slumped over their machines surrounded by piles of synthetic fabric and glowing smartphone screens. The backlash didn't stay in China. In the United States, the House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party launched a formal inquiry into Shein's alleged use of forced labor in Xinjiang. Shein's response: a short statement, "We have zero tolerance for forced labor." But no detailed audits, no third-party verification, just the same rehearsed language repeated. Then came the lawsuits. In 2023, a coalition of independent designers filed a suit against Shein, alleging a pattern of racketeering, claiming that the company's algorithm-driven design theft constituted a systemic criminal enterprise. The legal strategy was bold, but it sparked something greater, a public reckoning. Shein could no longer hide behind vague supplier blame or PR campaigns. It was now part of the cultural conversation, and that conversation was turning hostile. Young consumers, the very people Shein had relied upon, began to organize. Online petitions gained millions of signatures. Digital artists posted side-by-side comparisons of their stolen designs. Influencers who once promoted the brand posted confessionals. I didn't know, many of them said. Now I do. Some were met with empathy, others were accused of hypocrisy, but all of them added fuel to a growing fire. Governments started to act. France passed legislation cracking down on ultra-fast fashion, including digital platforms. The EU considered a ban on imports linked to forced labor. In the US, customs enforcement began flagging suspiciously underpriced shipments. But here's the catch: Shein had already started to move. In anticipation of regulation, the company shifted parts of its supply chain to countries with even weaker oversight. Reports suggested expansion in Ethiopia, Pakistan, and parts of Southeast Asia. It began hiring ex-US regulators and lobbyists. It filed to go public in the US, then withdrew the application, perhaps due to pressure, perhaps due to strategy. Meanwhile, in the shadows, the model continued. Workers still stitched in silence. Designs still appeared overnight. The hauls didn't stop. And yet something had changed. Consumer awareness had cracked the glass. A generation that once celebrated speed began to ask deeper questions. Who made this? At what cost? What does it mean to wear pain as fashion? Retailers noticed. Brands began pivoting their messaging. Slow fashion grew in popularity. Second-hand markets surged. Apps like Depop, Vinted, and Poshmark thrived. It wasn't a revolution, but it was a shift. Still, Shein's dominance remained terrifying. Even as backlash grew, so did their revenue. Even as ethics entered the discourse, discounts continued to drive behavior. The paradox was clear: we are addicted to cheap, and the system knows it. So what now? That's the question no one wants to answer. Because confronting it means confronting ourselves. We built Shein. With every click, every haul, every share. With every designer, we ignored every worker, we forgot every price tag, we didn't question. Shein didn't invent fast fashion. We asked for it: faster, cheaper, easier. And now we are faced with the wreckage. But within that wreckage lies a choice. A decision to push for transparency, to support ethical brands, to demand regulation that actually works, to vote not just with our wallets, but with our voices. It won't be easy. The supply chains are vast, the legal loopholes are deep, the marketing is relentless, and the next Shein is always waiting. But stories matter. Stories like Lily's and Feng's, like the stolen artists and the silenced critics, like the whistleblowers who risked everything. Their voices might not stop the machine, but they can change its direction. Because when enough people start paying attention, silence becomes impossible. So the next time you scroll past a $4 dress, ask yourself who paid the difference. And more importantly, what kind of future are we stitching together?